Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Scott Bradley's with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. It is a freedom-loving, fantastic, we're taking America back, one heart, one mind, one issue at a time Friday. It is a faith-filled Friday as well, ladies and gentlemen, as always. Hope you decide to have a little switch gears for the weekend. Hope you get a little bit of rest as well. Welcome to the show. I'm Sam Bushman. Dr. Scott Bradley's with me. So are we out of beans, bullets, and Band-Aids is the real question. Our emissions are dangerously low. We've been fighting, ladies and gentlemen, in Iran for 5 months plus now. We've also been fighting in Ukraine. Whether we say we're there or not, we're playing games because we're really spending our munitions like you would not believe. And now they're starting to say we're out of beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, Doctor.
Well, I don't know as they've gone right down to the beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, but I'm telling you.
I'm demonstrating the extreme a little bit by making a point, though. On one hand, they want you to believe they're fine. On the other hand, the truth is the truth, Doctor. Where are we really?
Well, that's really the whole challenge here. And in fact, yesterday, I watched Trump sign a couple of those. It was talked about on the news segment that happened just before this, where he was signing a couple of executive orders, and then he does one of his, on the run kind of press conferences, and the question came up about these munitions. And there are some very valid, very knowledgeable, very, shall we say, credible reports about the challenges that are coming on our really high-tech munitions. Now, we can go as low-tech because of the Ukraine war that you mentioned with our 155 millimeter artillery rounds, which were probably 8 years from being able to replenish our supplies, not even being able to do truly our own annual training with our military forces on those artillery rounds. They're the bread and butter, beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, I guess, of real war. But there's very credible reports that these high-tech munitions, these interceptive missiles that cost millions of dollars each, are really getting critical, and particularly in the THAAD missiles. I mean, these are the long-range, high-altitude kind of things that were designed to protect Europe from a Russian attack or United States from a foreign ballistic attack. They're really becoming critical. But the fact is, there's been a report. This one I saw on NBC said that there's now reports that some of the U.S. commanders are deliberately allowing Iranian missiles and drones to penetrate air defense systems to conserve this dwindling stockpile of intercept missiles.
Yeah, which puts our men and women, our children, at harm's way, sir.
Well, here's the deal. The report says the only time they're using them is when our personnel are at risk. They're letting targets like runways, radar installations, fuel depots, those kinds of things take the brunt of this. We are having those multi-billion-dollar resources thumped because we don't have adequate. Now, yesterday when I watched that Trump signing it with the little kind of on-the-run press conference, he goes, no, we've got depth and breadth munitions. They're unlimited. He didn't say that word exactly, but in essence, that's what he's saying. But then he hedged his bets, the way I caught it, by saying that older, less effective weapons are sometimes being used now. And so it's like, yeah, I remember back when I was
that's because they were using little teeny swarms of boats and little teeny drones, and we were spending billions and they were spending pennies, and they've literally for 5+ months through the Ukraine-Russia war, plus this, Iran deal, where they basically traded pennies for dollars for 5+ months, and they've just ran us out of capabilities. And now they know it, and we know it, and the world knows it. And we can't prevent from admitting it because they can see the truth. When we allow these things to go through our defense systems, they are smart enough to say, I wonder why that was allowed to happen. And when we start to use other weapons that aren't as sophisticated, then they say, why are they doing that? And so we're showing our hand at every turn, Doctor. This is disaster.
It truly is. And the reality of it is our production lines, you just don't turn the switch up a little bit higher. oh man, we're all going to be okay. No, we're talking likely at least 5 years, probably closer to 8, just in a similar manner to what the 155 millimeter artillery shells are. We are years behind being able to replenish our diminished stockpiles. And the White House is downplaying it. I mean, you look back at what Leavitt said when she'd be asked in press conferences, oh, are we getting low? And this was a couple, 2 or 3, 4 months ago. She said, we've got plenty for what we want. Well, they planned for a 4-day war, or 4-week at the most. And here we are 6 months into it now. And it's like pop, 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 pop. It used to be, here's the deal. When some incoming started, they send up a barrage, 10, 12 of these interceptor missiles at multi-million dollars per pop. Now we're sending them very judiciously, if at all, and there's a lot more stuff getting through. And as you say, Iran can't help but read this going, what do you mean? They forgot the on-off switch? Did they forget how to fire one of these puppies?
Well, and then the Chinese are watching too, though. Don't be fooled. And the North Koreans are watching too. Don't be fooled. And the Russians are watching as well. Don't be fooled. This isn't just an Iran, the tiny guy's going to get smashed. Then Donald says they're out of capabilities. And we start to see they're not. As we dwindle in our responses, they escalate and are starting to escalate theirs and attack even greater targets.
You look at people that you're saying, hey, these guys are noticing. They got to be noticing. And I say, you know what? Someday somebody may say, we can take these guys. And it may be a big boom instead of just a little regional kind of mess. I mean, what if, the coastline starts getting some incoming? Who knows? Heaven forbid any of that kind of stuff happens. But when you're in a hostile world and you have to be careful, here's the bottom line. We have not been watching out for America first for decades, and specifically and particularly during Donald Trump's whole term of office. He's talking about America first, America first. No, it was Iran is going to be put out of business on the benefit of Israel. And Ukraine is going to be resupplied, and he's blaming it all on Biden. But the fact of the matter is, folks, this nation has been more interested in being the global police officer than they have been in making sure America comes first. And somebody, and you mentioned Tucker Carlson a minute ago, they're talking about a third party, and maybe someday we can talk about that. That's a hard way to go, but they've got a bigger footprint than any of the third-party information stuff I've ever been involved in. But the fact of the matter is, there was a movement started. Trump started this America First stuff, which really started, many decades, even before I was born. And this was, really poo-pooed by the likes of, Wilson, Woodrow Wilson, the president, and all of these people that said, oh, yeah, we've got to take our rightful place among the nations, and we've got to be the leader of the world and all this kind of stuff. No, the Constitution doesn't ever talk about that. There's nothing in there that says, you guys got to be the pointy end of the spear. And the fact of the matter is, our biggest import should be our principles, or export, should be our principles. We teach by example. We go not abroad.
Well, so when do you
monsters.
think this war is going to end? Is it just going to end because we run out of beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, Doctor? Is that what's going to cause it to end?
To tell you the truth, I think Trump's been looking for an off-ramp for so long, and the problem is the upper hand is held by the other side. And let's just take, for example, the negotiations that are going on between Oman and Iran to run the Straits of Hormuz. This isn't, the United States is not in the middle of that. Trump would like to take wait a minute, we're in this argument too. No, wait a minute, we're helping this happen.
He's been dismissed, he's out of it. Now, on one hand, you could say that they've got the upper hand, and on the other hand, you could say he's brilliant because he's trying to get them to take care of their own things, and he's trying to stay out of it on purpose. The truth is hard to obtain, though, right?
First casualty of war is truth. But here's the problem. The United States is saying, you can't blockade the Straits. That's international water. Who's blockading the Straits? Yeah, Iran is. But so's the United States Navy. That's the problem is is there's always, you point a finger, you got others pointing back at you. And this whole thing has become such a fiasco that I really do believe the administration is panic-stricken. They've lost the Trump legacy. I think that's toast. They've probably lost the midterms and more than likely lost the 28 elections. Maybe there's time to recover. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't even know where to go with this, except for I will say this. We're in trouble. Why don't we skip the break? Thank you. We're in trouble over the
talk about, Sam.
over the missiles and the immunity doctrine, because you get qualified immunity and hey, no one's accountable for war. The president could just go to war and Congress, they won't rein him in. Nothing will happen. But we're spinning ourselves into oblivion.
Sam, it's an impeachment charge. All this other Bravo Sierra that they're always talking about, Russia, 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 which nothing. But it has been a blatant violation of constitutional authority by the President of the United States at the very highest level, at the most onerous task that any nation ever takes upon themselves. And he did it unilaterally. Oh, well, maybe not, because Bibi said. And that adds fuel to the fire. These things are
we're getting in bed with foreign nations at the expense of our own Congress and everything else. It's a disaster. And it seems like Congress wants to foment that or help that come to pass. Well, we got to start talking about the upcoming Second Amendment issues before SCOTUS. Are we going to have more gun rights or less gun rights when they're done, Doctor?
Well, the problem is that we have constantly states out there that are overstepping the bounds of the Second Amendment, and so I haven't got as good a handle on the exact number because I don't think Supreme Court has actually made a firm commitment on some of them. But there's stuff like high capacity magazines. California is going to be in one of those things before the Supreme Court because they're always dinking around with the Second Amendment against it. New Jersey lost just recently in I think it's the Third Circuit Court, substantially lost. It was a 10-5 vote that their assault weapons ban was unconstitutional, and no, they're panicking, and so the Supreme Court's agreed to hear that one. It's probably going to, it's against AK-47s and AR-type firearms. Again, the demeanor of the Supreme Court in recent years has been that they're going to probably rule in favor of getting rid of New Jersey's firearms laws. I lived in New Jersey for a while, and I got to tell you, they're whacked out on so many things, and maybe especially their firearm stuff. But there's all sorts of things out there. Oh, by the way, I might mention too that a recent Texas ruling by a federal judge said that because the National Firearms Act of 1934 was passed as a revenue act, based upon the Constitution, we have power to tax, but it was really to control certain firearms. And in recent times, the tax implications have gone away on short barrel shotguns, short barrel rifles, and silencers, suppressors, noise suppressors. And because of that, this U.S. judge, U.S. district judge, he said, you've eliminated the constitutional basis for this with taxing, and so short-barreled shotguns, silencers, and short-barreled rifles should be removed from the National Firearms Act. Of course, everything should be. It's unconstitutional. We could talk about how the Supreme Court twisted that in the Miller case back in 1939 to make it sound like it, and that's the way it's always been held. But they're saying because the tax implications with having some of these firearms has gone away, they've been reduced to zero for a tax cost, then the National Firearms Act no longer applies to them. And people say, wait, hold it, just a minute. No, we're going to use the Commerce Act now. No. That isn't what was used as justification for the National Firearms Act. So at the
end of the day, am I going to have more or less gun rights when they're done with all this, Doctor? That's really the bottom line, isn't it?
Well, the stupidity of the way the government organizes things before the Supreme Court can never be underestimated. This birthright citizenship thing that Trump just signed the executive order on, the government lawyer clowns blew that case to pieces, the other side probably didn't even need to show up. But the fact of the matter is, these lawyers argue based on their law degree things that these woke law schools have put out, and they blow the cases. So when you ask a simple question, and I should be able to say yes or no, but I do not trust that proper decisions will be made based upon how it will be approached. You can throw a case in court based upon the way you approach the case. And I fear lest the government attorneys will blow some of these cases, but unquestionably we should have a more firmly founded, principles-based Second Amendment standard if these things were followed, but I'm not so sure they're going to be. I mean, I think sometimes they throw cases because they want to. I mean, they undermine the very nature of our whole constitutional republic based upon the way the lawyers spin things. And I guess I've lost a lot of institutional trust.
Yeah, and there's no accountability for them either. The lawyers just get away with whatever they want to, and they just basically, modify and manipulate the law from the courts on down. And pretty soon the courts write more laws than Congress does, and that's the problem that we're facing. The 10th Amendment, I'm convinced that whether we have greater or less gun rights based on the courts and what's going to happen there, now that we're electing all these socialists, our gun rights are in jeopardy like you wouldn't believe, Doctor.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And what people don't understand, that in spite of all the socialists that are getting elected, and there is a groundswell there, but I think the Republicans in some ways are spinning this, oh, what a gift to the Republicans. Now the Republicans can win easily in a general election. But I'm not so sure that the Republican base is not rebelling against what the establishment Republicans have done to them, too. So I think that the elections are not quite as crystal clear as the Republicans. I mean, Trump and some other commentators, the wagging tongues that are on the news, are talking about what a gift this socialist stuff is for the Republicans. I think what's happened is that we have raised several generations of socialists through the public education system. It is an indoctrination system, and it is working just the way it was designed, 10th point of the Communist Manifesto. And so what's happening now is that people are they're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And the bottom line is they don't have the knowledge to know what the solutions really are. The solution is restoration of this great country. The solution is to preserve the nation, as your incredible book and collegiate series talks about. Those are the solutions to return to what worked, chain them down with the Constitution. But see, nobody has knowledge of the Constitution, and so they're running around hoping that some kind of socialism plan is going to save us, and it's a farce, and we're being led further and further and further away. We just seem to get, deceived on this. Look, religion and morality are essential to maintain liberty and proper government, Doctor.
That was a bit of a personal privilege that I took last night, honestly.
Well, it's spot on.
No, it's because I've had so many discussions. In fact, I got a call, probably it was about Wednesday this week, maybe Tuesday, from somebody that said, look, we need morality, but we don't need religion. And as George Washington said, how can we maintain morality if we don't have this semblance of religion,
You can't. You won't.
He said, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in the exclusion of religious principle. And so I at the end of the webinar last night, I said, look, I'm going to take some personal privilege. I'm going to step away from the questions. I'm going to discuss for a minute this idea of religion and morality being essential to maintain liberty and proper government. We talk about this all the time on this program, as you know, Sam. I mean, it's probably your hot button, but the fact of the matter is people are, based upon this phone call I had earlier this week, they're starting to say, no, we don't need religion. And the reason partly is they're saying, yeah, this guy, Al-Sayed, that's in Michigan, that's a Muslim. I mean, he's got religion, and man, he's going to take us off track. And we could talk about the Article 6 of the Constitution and why we don't have a religious test. But the fact of the matter is,
Christianity. It's God above us all. That's the general religion understanding when it comes to morality. But we don't have the keys to theology. We don't have to, force people to to be a specific religion, that's true. But to pretend that it's just any religion will do isn't true either. And to pretend that somehow there's not some kind of a morality component based on religion, hey, these people are just so far from the truth, we'll never get our country back because we have people basically who don't have any guideposts, doctrine for stability. They're just floating out there in the ocean, and they're crazy. Look, Donald Trump, for example, got turned down by the Supreme Court over this issue about anchor babies or whatever you want to call it. Birthright citizenship stuff. Okay, so he got slapped down by the courts. Now, it's all based on the 14th Amendment, which is bogus in the first place and manipulated till the cows come home. But now he's basically created 2 more executive orders. Well, they're just going to get in court and fight again. The only way to really solve it is to have Congress clarify it. They're the lawmakers, and to really get to the bottom of it. Congress is just on vacation. They're not even here, buddy. So, see, you're never going to solve it when the checks and balances are failing at every turn.
They truly are. But if we have abandoned God, I fear that he may abandon us. And I fear that we're way down that path for so many instances. I know, I tell you about when I was young, I left home at 16 and I traveled this country from coast to coast. And from when I was a teenager, I went from Florida to Alaska. I fell in love with this country. I fell in love with the people that were in the flyover zones, the people I came to know. But I'm sad that so many, the people I came to know are my age or older now. And we have a godless religious philosophy. It's a faith-based philosophy that's taught to our children incessantly from kindergarten through all of the graduate degrees you can possibly think about getting.
And it gets worse the further you go along, too.
It does. You get more and more into the black robes that have created their own faith-based godless system. But the problem is that there is a foundation that we're unwilling to look at and go back to. We've got to return to that foundation. And I used, there's only time in 15 minutes to jabber about these things, and we're way out of that time. But I took 15 minutes of reviewing the American founders' perspective on the necessity of religion and morality in the maintenance of our virtue as a nation. And virtue, public and private virtue, was a very, very interwoven concept in this thing. And even Montesquieu, or a generation before the American founders, had talked explicitly about in a republic, virtue is absolutely the essential. In fact, the one-word description he used of a republic as being essential was virtue. All of these things are interwoven. And if, as a nation, we cannot do this, if the commander-in-chief if his wife can't trust him, can I? We have to ask ourselves these kinds of questions. And we need to elect and maintain individuals that not only understand it, but live it. And we just don't have that going on right now. And people say, like, you brought up Tucker Carlson earlier and some of these things that Marjorie Taylor Greene and maybe Massey are doing about a third party.
And they're fine, and I appreciate their efforts, but look, they're avoiding the core too. None of their stuff really focuses on what I would.
Well, that is true. But
they're right about these things, but they're not core issues. We got to turn people back to God and defund government. Not 100%. But look, the reason they can wreak so much havoc is because they have so much illegal, dishonest, immoral money.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve's a big thing, but I got a request from somebody the other day. They asked me to send them some baseline principles. They said, well, get my book and read it. There's a lot of baselines in there. But I sent them 20 pages.
Baseline principles are God, family, country in that order, buddy. Just start digging in.
Right. But the problem is that people don't want to think about it. I got pushback last night about on the webinar on questions that came in that says, I disagree with Washington about religion, but yeah, we got to go with morality. Well,
okay, good luck with that plan. See, that's the problem. We split hairs, we divide, we just ignore what has worked. And every time we stick with the Constitution and chain them down, we do better. Whenever we ignore the Constitution, it goes south in a hurry. And if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. The Constitution was put in place, in my opinion, to prepare people for the Savior to return. That's what we need to keep our eye on that ball, ladies and gentlemen. We need to become a Christ-like people ready for his return. That's the key, in my humble opinion. For Dr. Scott Bradley and Sam Bushman, God save our constitutional republic.